Hello, everyone. You're welcome to the session titled African Scientists in the Diaspora, Successes and Challenges. We have just 40 minutes, so we have to manage our time effectively. At this juncture, I would like to ask the President of the Nigeria Academy of Science, Professor Ekanem Braid, FAS, to give our opening remark.
Thank you, Nike. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you greetings from fellows of the Nigerian Academy of Science, the foremost independent scientific body in Nigeria. Our academy is uniquely positioned to bring scientific knowledge to bear on policies and strategic direction of the country, and is dedicated to the development and advancement of science, technology, and innovation in Nigeria. We are very pleased to have this opportunity of participating in the Global Summit for Diaspora Networks in Science. The summit provides opportunity for diaspora scientists from all disciplines, stakeholders in academia, governments, industry, and media to come together to share experiences, challenges, and successes, and come up with ideas that can make diaspora networks more efficient and more effective. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this session of the summit, hosted by the Nigerian Academy of Science. We have three panelists with us today. They will give their perspectives on successes and challenges of African scientists in the diaspora. During this session, contribution of African scientists in diaspora to development in Africa will be discussed. More insights will be provided on the policy environment for science and research in Africa. This is quite important. Challenges encountered by African diasporan scientists will be flagged out. And we in the Nigerian Academy of Science, we hope that at the end of the session, recommendations will emerge for optimal participation of diaspora scientists in socioeconomic development in their various countries of origin. We also expect that potential avenues of collaboration among African scientists in diaspora and relevant agencies will be identified and used for promotion of the advancement of science and technology for development. This session is also a call to action for governments at all levels to provide enabling environment for evidence-informed policymaking, particularly in the use of science, technology, and innovation for the achievement of sustainable socioeconomic development in Africa. I would like to end my remarks by thanking the moderator, the panelists, and participants for taking time out to be part of this very useful conversation. I also thank the organizers for offering the Academy of Science the opportunity to participate in this very important event. I wish you all a pleasant experience today. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Ekanem Braid, for your mark and brief remarks. I think this is how it's going to go so that we'll all benefit from this session and so that we're able to take questions as well. We have 20 minutes to listen to the three participants. And what I will do is introduce each person, and I'll ask you to please take just 5 minutes so that we'll have enough time for the question and answer. Once you see me dancing, then that means your time is up. So I'll start with, in this order, I think Professor Olubukola Babalola will go first. For the sake of our participants, Professor Olubukola Babalola is Professor and Director of Food Security and Safety at Northwest University, South Africa. And she's also the incumbent Vice President of OWS, the African region. And I'm glad to say that she's also a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Science. If you need to know more about any of these people, they are renowned people, you can please look them up on Google so that we don't waste time. So Professor Bukola Babalola, please, your perspective and as the President has laid out.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Adeyemo. I am really blessed to share platform with you. I also want to thank our president, in fact, the very first female president of the Nigeria Academy of Science. You are trending. I'm happy to be here, and straight to my point, I want to say these factors that have aided my success in the diaspora are many, but let me just list 7 of them. Number 1 is the access to high level of technology and facilities. I mean, that has provided me with the platform that I'm using to operate as an individual, and it has helped me to grow in my research. Another one is finding myself in the new environment. The new environment itself give birth to the to new idea, because there is that instinct that I must survive, and that personal push is there, so is a leverage. Another one is when you find yourself in holding a high position in a top rank university. By that, it's more than just holding the position. For example, in my own case, I was exposed to a lot of trainings. And then all these trainings are the ones that are like pillars in my career. And those things are not come by easily. The other one I can mention is the aspect of quality research. Not that Africans in their very own country are not doing quality research. But what I'm trying to say in this aspect is the enabling environment that makes it possible to do that quality research. And the other aspect, which is very heavy, and probably I could have even said that first, is the aspect of the availability of funding to do research. I, at this point, just want to say kudos to the National Academy of National Research Foundation of South Africa. I've been receiving so much fund, and I must tell you, this fund, all the students that are coming to my lab do not pay me a dime to do research in my lab. They only need to fund themselves. And I'm talking in terms of to have graduated 28 PhDs, none of them coming with a single penny to do the research. So not to talk of the masters and the honors and the other ones that are like visiting students from abroad, even those that came with TED fund. They are, yeah. So another vital one is the resources. By resources, I don't limit it to financial resources. I'm talking also in terms of human resources. I'm talking in terms of exposure, and all those things, as simple as they sound, are strong pillars. I cannot leave out the aspect of social, technical, and professional networking that I enjoy by being in this diaspora. Those are my success factors. Notwithstanding, I have challenges, and the challenges are not singled out to me, but they are things that are obvious that each and every one, if you find yourself somewhere, you will experience. Because even within the same locality, if I use Nigeria for example, you will see that if you are Hausa and you find yourself somewhere in the Yoruba land, then they will sometimes tell you where you belong, that you belong to the north and things like that. So the aspect of racism you cannot push away. The aspect of you to work extra hard to define your status, that you merit something, is another challenge. The other challenge is the area that when due for promotion, you may find out that you will need to go extra mile because you are not an indigene. I'm sorry to say, but it's the hard truth. Another one could be when you are made to remember that you are a second-hand citizen. Not to talk of the aspect of diversity and inclusion. I mean, those are the challenges when the issue of diversity and inclusion are not embraced the way it's supposed to be. Another one will be language, because I speak English and Yoruba and French, but I do not speak the local dialect. So when I want to have industrial partner, I mean, sometimes, or when I want to go to the field for something, I have to go with my student that can speak the local language. And that has been my penetrating opportunity. But all being said, what is it that I can recommend for our Academy of Sciences or for the government? There are many. Number one, will be to maintain a great database. A database that, like, these are the mathematicians in so country, these are the mathematicians here at home. Then with that database, they can find themselves, they can collaborate. I tell you, nowadays, research cannot be done in isolation. The world is everything is global. We talk of open science nowadays. We talk of globalization of research. So you can't do research in isolation. Networking and collaboration must be strong. To enhance that, maintaining a database is a way to go. Another one will be to purposefully carry out research that will benefit the home country. Is a deliberate one and is strategic. If one works towards it, it will be achieved. And if you want to do it also, you can't do it in isolation because you will need the home-based person. Now, you might be looking at in terms of differentiation or in terms of commonality in the area of research and things like that. So it brings the outside and the inner person in. If I have other opportunity to speak, I will continue to speak. But public engagement, issue of continental progress, issue of scientific community in alliance cannot be thrown away. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I wanted to start dancing, but I think you still have opportunity, and that's why we want to take turns, and then we can now go to other areas where we identify gaps. I think the next person to go, and I thank you so very much for being so sunset. I actually benefited a little bit from a lot, not a little bit from what you have said. Professor Karen Hoffman will go next, and she is a research professor and founding director of the South Africa Medical Research Council Center for Health Economics and Decision Science at the University of Wits School of Public Health. I'm glad to know that she's also a fellow of Academy of Science of South Africa. Professor Hoffman, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Professor Adebayo. So I am somebody who has worked both as a diaspora scientist for 25 years in the United States, and my career spans 3 phases. I graduated from Wits Medical School and completed my training as a pediatrician in the United States, and then I did some fellowships in childhood developmental disabilities and genetics. And so I learned a lot about being a clinician scientist while I was on faculty at Johns Hopkins and doing my training there. And then I was a senior health research administrator at this US NIH, National Institutes of Health. And this all took about 25 years. And after about 25 years, my husband and I decided that we would return to South Africa. And for the past 15 years, I've been a policy researcher. And I thought I would be here for about a year. So the plan was to come for about a year. It's now 15 years later, and I'm still here. So I do consider myself a diaspora scientist who's returned home. And it's been a great privilege to do so, because I've been able to lead policy research and contribute to health policy in South Africa and to its citizens. And some of the things that I learned when I was abroad include the fact that having a diaspora program would be a good idea. I will say that not everybody agreed with me. They thought that it was a waste of time. Many people in the United States thought it was just a waste of time and that people would just come and abuse the system to see their families. I disagreed entirely, but I was only one voice in the room. And all these experiences abroad, I will say, provided me with a profound understanding of the research processes. And much like Professor Babalola, I felt that I really learned about what it means to do meticulous and high quality research. And that really makes a big difference. The research, I also learned how research funding agencies think about proposals and the difference between donors and research funders. They're not quite the same thing, and they have different needs and requests. And the importance of working with international organizations and policymakers to share knowledge was something that I learned abroad. and the importance of communicating with both the media and the public was something that I don't think I would have learned elsewhere. I don't think I would have learned that necessarily here in South Africa, but I did learn that and I've translated that. And the other important thing that I learned was that getting intellectual support from visiting scholars and collaborating institutions from across the globe is a very important thing. What I feel has aided my success as a diaspora scientist, and I do consider myself that, is working on issues that impact low and middle income countries, and especially on your home country. That is critical. I also have learned that some things take time and take longer than originally anticipated, and that people don't always buy into your ideas immediately. So you have to be flexible. But what more important is that I have learned to listen very carefully to all my colleagues in many different settings. And I think that everybody has something to teach me. So I've taken that attitude, and I think that has helped me be successful. I would say that some personal challenges, both sitting in the United States and returning home for the last 15 years, has allowed me to see the world again from a global South perspective. It has been difficult and challenging to reinvent myself. It's also been a big question for me as to whether one can really come home again. So I thought that it would be relatively easy to slip in back into academia here, but it's not so simple. And I've had to learn many different lessons, but I feel like I'm finally back home. And the importance of supportive colleagues on the ground cannot be underestimated. So that has really been a big help. And I would just say my recommendations to countries and African academies must be to maximize the contributions of diaspora scientists. I think they have a huge amount to add. The best universities in the world recognize the need to establish both these global and local partnerships in fostering intellectual communities. And as somebody else said in, I think, the previous session on Georgia, that the collaboration of scientists between the developed and developing world is an opportunity to reverse the brain drain and to enable what we are commonly calling brain circulation. And I think that's an important thing, and we should stop talking about brain drain and rather talk about brain circulation. I would say that attracting alumni from the diaspora can really strengthen the development of talented scientists and can strengthen research in Africa in a big way. And when I returned in 2010, I helped the Faculty of Health Sciences at the University of Witwatersrand to create an alumni diaspora program to boost international research collaborations with people who live and work in academic institutions abroad. This is in many different countries. The program was able to capitalize on some of the intellectual capacity that was lost mostly during the decades of apartheid, and to strengthen capacity not just in South Africa, but across the continent. I think we feel very much part of that continental capacity. And this WITS Alumni Diaspora Project, which was a pilot, demonstrated to me anyway that the international alumni have been absolutely delighted to engage with their alma mater and to show interest, and many have commented on the opportunities to quote unquote give back. So the program has promoted engagement with research active alumni who are willing to come home for short periods to encourage and foster research in the Faculty of Health Sciences, to develop research collaborations, and to promote exchanges of postgraduate students. And many of these collaborations have been established, with many of the alumni now mentoring or supervising junior staff and postgraduate students. And I think,
I stop you right now, and so that we can go to the next presenter, after which we'll come back and then you can complete.
No problem. Thank you very much. I'm sorry to take so long.
No problem. The next person will be Professor Sonny O'Hare. He is a professor of pharmacology at Texas Southern University, and he also served as provost and vice president for academic affairs and research at Texas Southern University from 2008 until 2014. He is also a fellow of Nigeria Academy of Science. Prof, 5 minutes, please. Thank you. Kindly unmute yourself. You are muted.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Professor Diaspora, for your kind introduction. And actually, when I think about diaspora, I would like to say to the panel that I never planned to be a diaspora scientist. I planned to be a scientist in my home country, but circumstances has dictated otherwise. When I left Nigeria about 30 years ago to go and earn a doctorate degree at the University of Glasgow, Scotland, my intent was to go back and give back to my country. But as it appears, circumstances took me across for a postdoctoral fellowship in Canada, and then eventually to another postdoctoral fellowship here in the US. And I've been here since 1988. Okay, what have I noticed? What are the opportunities that are out there that has made me to be who I am today? I must say that the very first thing for a diaspora scientist in any country they find themselves in is to make sure that they put in their best. As I look back and as I reflect on my career, I noticed that hard work had paid off. Because when I arrived at my first faculty position at Creighton University in 1991, I went straight, writing grants, which is what we're expected to do as faculty members here. And I was able to acquire funding within 6 months to set up a lab, my own lab on campus in a university that is not research intensive. That gave me that led to the attention of my superiors, who then looked at me and said, hey, we want you to come in here and help us in the leadership realm. And that's how I ended up in being a department chair, and the rest is history to where I am today. But the point to be made here is that hard work. And I can recall that for me to be successful, I spent 7 days in the office and my lab. Because as a department chair, I also had to show leadership by also acquiring grants and having a functional research program. So there's a lot of hard work to be put in there. But what I can say to my colleagues is that there's availability of robust infrastructure for instance, here in the United States, and that enables success. That can facilitate success, but the individual has to make use of those opportunities. We have funding, and I know Professor Babalola had alluded to funding. Okay, yes, there's funding, and the good thing here is that the funding, you have to sit down and write those grants and be able to acquire them. And there's also funding from industry and foundations that can enable you to be successful. So the bottom line here is to be successful and how you have to put in the hard work. Luckily, there are not too many barriers as far as ethnicity or race as it is, if you put in the hard work. That's what I would say. Challenges that diaspora scientists will face, at least in the US academia, is the tenure tracks to tenure system. The system is very, very, and it occurs both in private and public universities. If you don't put in your best in your first 6 years on appointment as an assistant professor at the US university, and you can't make tenure, you're out of job. And more likely than not, most other universities will not pick you up. I've seen several colleagues of mine go by the wayside, but as a department chair, as a dean, and as a provost. So that can be a challenge for a diaspora scientist. And also you have research expectations that are different from what you will expect in their home countries. But that in itself does not mean you cannot be successful. There are several diaspora scientists that are even more successful than I am because they have utilized the system very well. What about my suggestion for how we can connect? Luckily for us today, look at us today in a conference like this. We are in Houston, Texas, South Africa, Nigeria. We are communicating. Mm-hmm. What can be useful for diasporans, as diaspora scientists, as they try to help their home countries, is to make use of this opportunity. But first of all, the home country has to recognize the fact that you can utilize this means to tap expertise from wherever in the world. For instance, during the pandemic, I gave lectures to my students for a year and a half, sitting in my home office that I'm talking to you now. That can be also utilized to provide expertise for the different academic institutions back home, and that expertise can be real time. So universities at home, for instance, cannot cry that they don't have opportunities to recruit, the best. You can recruit, actually, the technology allows you to recruit the best from anywhere in the world today. I can give a lecture, as I'm giving now to my students, to any other university anywhere in the world in real time, and can answer questions from the students in real time. So those are the opportunities that the different home countries can avail themselves of. And of course, you can also have more formal ways of having some kind of partnerships or fellowships that will enable the scientists to be able to return to their country to give back. The point here I can say is that I know from my other colleagues that are also in diaspora, we are always willing to go back to help our home countries, but our home countries have to ask for the help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. And thank you for staying with the time. I've looked at the chat box and we don't have any questions. So what I will do is direct our discussion. One of the major things that came out of this is, number one, how can Africa take advantage of scientists in the diaspora? Some of the things that came out of this, I think Professor Ohier already said one of the very valuable ways. COVID-19 has taught us that there's possibility when you don't have a choice. It has helped us to imagine how we interact. I've been sitting at this is my home office as well, and I've had like 2-3 meetings today already, virtual, and with people around the world as well. So one of the things, the question I'll ask us, and I will go in the same order, is let's take 2 minutes to talk about, number one, he talked about the universities asking for help. How about you offering to help? Actually, in the area, we have Carnegie mobility kind of fund that actually enables people in diaspora to come back home. We have such a opportunity. But apart from that, what other things? Actually, the issue that Professor Babalola identified. Number one, funding. How do you deploy your funding? By collaborating with people in Africa. The grant I'm on right now is a USAID grant. And one of the issues with Africa is that if you get grant from outside of the country, most of the time it's difficult for you to run research that will actually benefit your country. It's usually more outwards facing. And so how do you use your influence and capacity and access to all those things to actually mentor, in quote, researchers back in your own country? That's number one. The other thing I would like us to talk about is what do we recommend as the policy? What things needs to change? South Africa is actually playing the big brother. I always say South Africa is not Africa. When you talk about science and research, that's my opinion, because South Africa is so far ahead of most of the other African countries when it comes to research and development. So what are the things that need to be in place in terms of policy? What are your recommendations? And then the third thing would be your advice to young scientists, so that it's not really brain drain like Professor Hoffman said, but brain circulation, because everyone is rushing to leave at this time, which is also not beneficial to the own countries. Professor Babalola, you go first, 2 minutes, please, and then we'll go around.
Yeah, thank you, Professor Adeyemo. My own contribution, way of giving back, is exactly what I've been doing, because I caught this dream even long ago, and that is in terms of capacity building. I must confess to you, the funding that I have is restricted for the purpose for which you receive the fund, but there are some fundings that are bilateral, and then when there are calls for bilateral grants, we do submit application for bilateral grant, and that is why you will even see some of my work that is published with people back home. But in terms of capacity building, when anyone comes to me, I'm able in that aspect to equip that individual. And I must confess to you, the products that I've made, I will say only the examples of the Nigerians that have passed through me. You will find them doing postdoc in Canada, in USA, in UK, in Italy, in Sweden, Italy also, they have my products, and then is a way of giving back, which I'm proud to say. What I will offer to the young ones is that proper planning prevents poor performance. Anything that you want to do, you need to do proper planning. If, for example, my aim is to study abroad, I need to sit down and do internet search. When you search, you will see applications. I mean, I'm not even talking of unsolicited application. You will see calls for application that you apply for. You must not give up. No good things come such, I mean, easily like that. So you must push for it. In terms of recommendation, I will suggest that the academy tries to manage a smooth relationship between the scientists in the diaspora and scientists that are based at home. And I think that is the beginning. That is just the way to start. It's a great foundation, because when you find yourself like, I'm an engineer, you are an engineer, and your area of specialization aligns with my area of specialization, we can start talking. We can develop proposal. We can talk of student esteem. We can talk of you visiting my lab 3 months a year and then doing great work and going back and doing the write-up and things like that. Thank you.
Very much. Professor Hoffman, before you go, I think we have 2 questions, and the 2 I think are directed at you. One says, do you ever regret being back home? If so, why? And if not, why? I think you already alluded to some of those things, but you can actually take that. The second thing is, how do you experience challenges with integrating to society? And also, what would you advise to a professional that is settling in a new country? Yeah, and so I think I will take those 2, and then Professor Hoffman can go.
Sorry, I misunderstood the last question, the second question.
Integrating into a new country, how was that for you, and what will be your advice to somebody that is just, yeah.
Okay, so thank you very much, Professor Adeyemo. I don't regret coming home for a nanosecond, okay? It was absolutely amazing. I've learned so much. I felt like I've really been able to give something back. It wasn't easy. It was much more difficult than I anticipated. I thought it would be easier than it was, but looking back, is no question, I absolutely did the right thing, and I've been able to mentor people on the ground in South Africa with the learnings that I had from abroad. So I'm delighted to be here. So I don't regret it at all. And the other question is, how difficult was it to be in another country? It was very difficult. It was a real adaptation in many levels, not least of which was the scientific capacity. And I just want to answer your question, Professor, about in the same way, is that I think that, strengthening institutional capacity is not really just about the science. It is about the science, no question. But it's also about what is on the ground in those settings, in any setting. It's about physical infrastructure, information, communications, technology, informatics, administrative capacity. So I just want to say that the administrative capacity and the financial capacity to manage the grants and to manage the back and forth is really critical. And I would say, if I had to say one lesson for African institutions, I don't think South Africa isn't African. I think it really is. You would be amazed to know. Is to try and strengthen the administrative capacity. There are a lot of grants and contracts that are not fair. Okay, there's no real fairness in those contracts. A lot of them are in favor of what I call the global north. And I think there needs to be much more effort placed on authorship from people in the global south, and contracting, innovative research fairness issues. There is a group out of Geneva that deals with this, but it is quite expensive to join them. But I would say, if I had to say one of the things that I've experienced, I think there's still ongoing colonialism in a big way, and we need to address it. And I think that's for the whole continent. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. And for clarification in terms of R&D, South Africa is so far ahead, and that's what I meant. Of course, you can't dislocate South Africa from Africa. So, Professor O'Hare, you have a question as well, and then you can address. We have like 5 minutes more to round up this session. And do you ever wish you had stayed back in Nigeria? And then do you think things may have turned out differently for you? That is a question for you, Professor O'Hare and Babalola, but I think Professor O'Hare can go. And then we can also address the other issues as well.
Thank you, Professor Adeyemo. Yes, believe it or not, even as this morning when I woke up, I thought about this presentation or this panel, and I said, what would have happened if I went back to Nigeria? Where would I have been as far as my career? So that itself, that haunts me, because my original intent was never to be a diaspora scientist. But since I find myself one, I keep struggling as to how best can I help, our scientists back home, or contribute to our nation's scientific realm. And one of the things that I would say comes to my mind, and it's part of what we discussed earlier in the panel here, I think the National Academy of Science, Nigerian Academy of Science, should create a database of diaspora scientists, not just members of the academy alone. Encourage everybody that is a scientist that is in diaspora from Nigeria to sign up to that database. And then becomes a resource for the entire country to be able to utilize. And I also recommend this for other African countries too, so that way these diaspora scientists can have a way to contribute. And you don't have to necessarily travel to the countries themselves using the Carnegie Fellowship or any of those types. You can do that. I've just said I taught 1.5 years of classes online from my home office. I interacted with students in the labs, virtual labs and all that. So all of that can happen without anybody leaving their home offices. But we can provide that expertise for our home countries that way. Yes, I wish I had gone back to Nigeria, but on second thoughts, given the situation, the opportunities I've had outside Nigeria, I thank God that I had the opportunity to be able to be where I am. But I can still help Nigeria. I can still contribute to my home country. And I believe most diaspora scientists can share the same passion that I have to give back to our countries where we originated from. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor O'Hare. We have just 2 minutes. And I think the issue of the matter is that there's nothing there's no absolute anywhere. There will always be trade-off, whether you are in country or you're in diaspora. It might not be necessarily your career. It could be that you wish your kids were more Nigerianized than they are right now. So there will always be trade-offs. That's the truth. And so it's just a function of working what works for you. I think I'll give us a minute to go around, and any burning thoughts, actually, as policy. One of the things you said about having a database, I think that is going on in different areas. I think it was one of the things that came up the last council meeting of the Academy of Science. And we understand that I think the Global Young Academy are already doing it, and there was no need to repeat that. So we also find that it will be beneficial to actually have a database. At the level of, I was a fellow of Eisenhower fellowship, and I was a fellow of Schlumberger fellow as well. And I know we are doing what we call audit of equipment for us in sciences. It's about, you don't have to limit yourself to what you have within your institution. So we are doing like a nationwide audit of what is available and where. And that will also help collaboration, so that if you are limited in an area, you can collaborate even within Nigeria. Like you said, most of the time we are always looking at North, the global North, which might pose a lot of challenge. But even regional collaboration, regional integration will help us to get there faster than looking at the North for help or assistance. So your quick burning, we have just 1 minute to go. And I think I've said enough. I want to thank everybody. So you go around and just say one thing, but I think it's an opportunity to say thank you for your robust discussion and for contributing, Professor Hoffman, Professor O'Hare, and Professor Babalola. So your final word before our time is up, Professor Babalola.
Yeah, thank you, Prof. I will say that I'm very open to to mentoring the young one, so they are free to contact me. My aim is for continental progress. Thank you.
Yes, I would. Yeah, I would agree. I think we need to do much more in the continent and focus all the different academies together on this issue. Thank you so much.
So here.
And I would like to add for the young ones that are aspiring to be where we are, please remember that the simplest way to be successful in life is to have plans, to have hopes, and to work hard. Thank you.
I think we've had a really robust discussion. I want to thank the President of the Nigerian Academy of Science for actually putting up a proposal to have this session, this conference, and I want to thank everyone for coming in and for being contributing so beautifully. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Prof. Thank you,
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you to all the attendants. And bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.